Hey, welcome back, everybody. It is time for some final thoughts on Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Whew, what a book. There is a lot, and it is a slim volume. I mean, look at this thing right here, right? Not a giant book, not a huge doorstop book. It's a slim volume, but there is a lot that we can take from it. There's a lot we can get to apply to ourselves, to the world around us. I think it's really neat. I think it's a lot of fun. And some of the thoughts that lingered with me are some thoughts I want to kind of explore here. Of course, the big one is the idea of what we owe to each other. If you ever watched The Good Place, which you really should watch if you haven't watched that already, that TV show and the sort of central philosophy of that TV show is built on this sense that we do not exist in isolation, that we do not exist as islands unto ourselves. We exist with other people, and therefore we owe things to other people. And I think Shelley was definitely exploring this idea. What does Victor owe to the creature? Did Victor owe the creature love? Did Victor owe the creature parenting, even though that's not really what Victor wanted to make? Victor just wanted to make a living thing. Victor didn't want a son or a child. Nevertheless, is that act of creation now bestow upon him a moral requirement to take care of the creature, a moral requirement which, of course, he took off and did not fulfill? Does the creature owe anything to Victor, right? Without Victor, the creature would not exist. And the creature seems a bit angry about that. And this is where we can get into philosophies like antinatalism, which is a real thing, where the idea that bringing a child into the world without its consent is inherently immoral. There's something to be said for that. If you are religious, you may try to explore the relationship between God and humans, and the creature definitely brings this up repeatedly. One of the texts that the creature found and read in enriching its knowledge was, of course, Paradise Lost. And so you might ask ourselves, well, did God create us and then abandon us to our own devices? If so, then what does this mean for our relationship with God? Now, of course, the Bible itself, if you read that, if this is something that you believe in, would suggest no, the God has been kind of meddling in our lives as a species for quite some time. And again, if you are depending on your variety of Christendom, you would say that the sort of final sacrifice of Jesus was supposed to be God's promise that he would always be with us and always watching after us forever, so long as we follow the rules. I myself am not a religious person. I tend to actually, and I had this thought that predated my reading of Frankenstein. And there are times when I toy with the idea of maltheism, which is the idea that God actually hates us, and every day that you wake up is a victory against the supreme being of the universe. So, take that. That may apply a bit more to Victor and the creature. The Victor wants the creature dead. The creature strives to survive and also wants Victor dead. I think there is an argument to be made, maybe by smarter people than me, who are better versed in theology, especially, about what the sort of God-Adam or God-Satan relationship is between Victor and the creature, which Shelley definitely starts us off on and kind of kicks us off and says, go explore this idea all you want. But I feel like I need better education before I can really, really pound that one into shape. Nevertheless, there are mornings when I got to get up for work. It's still dark outside. I don't want to be at work. I want to be at home with my cats, and I think you created me, and you know how that is. So something else I thought about. This is a hard topic switch, by the way. Best kind. Something else I was thinking about was the structure of the book. Yes, from deep philosophical questions about God and man and the nature of the divine to literary structure. One of the neat things about this book is it is a nested narrative. There are various shells. It's like a Russian doll. The outermost shell, of course, is Walton writing letters to his sister and trying to find the North Pole. The second shell is Victor's story. The third shell is the creature's story. And then we can get even smaller into that to talk about the DeLacy's. There's sort of two tiny stories inside the creature story. The story of the DeLacy family and the story of Saifi, who is the Arab girl who comes to live with the DeLacy's. Why do that is the question that I have in mind. I'm not asking because I don't like it. I do like it. I think it's a neat thing. But why? What is the reason behind it? Because Shelley it was perfectly within her power to start this novel from chapter 1, where Victor starts to tell his story. It would be within her power to write maybe a third-person narrative where we see Victor's story and then we see the creature story and they kind of intermingle with each other. as the creature is learning and as Victor is trying to recover from what's happened. There were a lot of ways to structure this story. Shelley chose this matryoshka Russian doll style, and I find it's interesting. I think why she did it, I don't know. Maybe that's just how she wanted to do it. Writers don't always know why they do things. They just recognize that this is how the story needs to be told, and anything else just doesn't feel right. And so maybe that was it for Shelley. There's also a kind of I know that the sort of epistolary style was popular in the 19th century. We'll see not Frankenstein, we'll see Dracula do this some decades later, where the story is told all in letters and missives and reports. There's also a sense maybe that by creating it this way, it almost becomes like found fiction, right? Kind of like, I don't know, if you're my age, an American, you might remember the Blair Witch Project, which was this whole movie that the premise was that it was a bunch of film that was found in the woods, and the filmmakers watched it and spliced it together into a movie, and that is the Blair Witch Project. None of that is true. That was part of the fiction of the movie, and it was brilliant. It was really, really well done. But maybe that could be sort of a stylistic choice that Shelley made, that yes, this is obviously a story that Mary Shelley wrote, but she's presenting it as a real thing, as an artifact of this Captain Walton. Maybe these letters that Walton sent to his sister were found in the sister's possession or in the sister's estate, or maybe Walton, even though at the end of the book Walton decides to turn around, he does not continue forward to the North Pole. Maybe Walton comes back with these letters and decides, you know what, if I can't see the North Pole, I can at least see these accounts published. And so in that sense, the letter format, this style that Shelley has chosen, gives it a better sense of reality and realness. And we as readers get to kind of suspend our disbelief a little bit, right? We know it's not real. We know none of this is real, but we can treat it as though it were real. So that gives it a little bit of a fun, extra sort of aspect to it, in a sense. And the last thing I wanted to kind of think about, and I know this is short, there's so many things to think about with Frankenstein. I mean, again, there are people who make careers out of Frankenstein, who make all their bones out of Frankenstein. And if you are one of those people and you would like to educate me some more on Frankenstein, please do. I would love to. I want to hear more, because whatever I learn, I can then fold into my lessons when I teach this to students. I promise you will get credit. I don't want H. Bomber Guy to come after me. But one of the final things that I thought about is how this story was written by a 19-year-old. I've done writing. I like writing. If you could see my hard drive, you would see the abandoned corpses of so many short stories and novels. I don't know why. There's a reason for it. I got to work on that. That's a me thing. That's not a you thing. That's a me thing. But yeah, at 19, to have written this story, which becomes not just a well-beloved classic, not just, adapted into every other possible medium that you can think of, but a story that just says so much about what it means to be human and what it means to be a member of the world. At 19, that's wild. And I gotta applaud her for having done that. And I think I hope that Shelley was able to recognize the impact that she had on the literary world. I know that Frankenstein is often considered the first true science fiction novel, and I know that sci-fi as a genre didn't really kick off maybe until after Shelley was dead. So maybe she didn't really get to see the fruits of her work. But nevertheless, I hope that if Shelley's spirit is out there in the ether somewhere, shanking people with a switchblade, I would hope that she'd appreciate the effect that she's had on the world and on literature in general. So that makes this story a really good one to start with for, I think, the YouTube channel, is to talk about one of those books that kind of began so many things and was so important to the canon of English literature. So what can we say to wrap all of this up? Number one, of course, Frankenstein. Very good book. I have a few other editions of it. One of them has a bunch of commentaries at the end of it, so if you can find something with commentaries, please do that, because you get to see a lot smarter people than me writing very, very well about very different aspects of the book. Go see the movies, and you can, after you've read the book, you can be one of those real smug people who watches the movies and go, that's real, that didn't happen in the movies. There was no lightning anywhere. He didn't have bolts on his neck. He was actually very handsome. It says right there in chapter 5. You can be really annoying that way and just annoy your friends and not have any friends anymore and turn into Victor and then die in the north. But I think it is a book worth reading. If you haven't read it, again, it's not very long. You can get through it It's very good. And hopefully you will appreciate all of the things, all of the meanings, all of the ideas that we can take from Frankenstein. And so why don't we leave with a quote from the book, one that I think kind of encompasses a lot of what the book is about. And this comes from fairly early in the story, where Victor says, "How dangerous is the acquirement of knowledge, and how much happier that man is who believes his native town to be the world, than he who aspires to become greater than his nature will allow." Think on that. Come on back. We'll talk about a different book next time. Thanks for stopping by. See you later.